Welcome back to the Law&Crime Network. Just before the break, we heard testimony from a first responder, and she talked about what she saw when little Sterling was found inside of that home. Right now, we want to take a listen to the actual 911 call made on that day.
South County 911.
This is Zachary Koehn. We need an ambulance sent out here to my apartment.
Okay, what's your address, Zach?
107 South Hilltop Avenue in Alta Vista.
Okay, what's going on?
Around 9, my girlfriend went to feed our son, and then about 11 or 11:30, she went to check on him, and he was gone.
Gone meaning?
He died.
Okay.
He's like probably 4 months. I don't know if it's sudden death syndrome or what.
Okay, so you live at 107 South Hilltop in Alta Vista? What?
Apartment 7.
Apartment 7? Okay, and your son is 4 months old, and the last time that you was checked on was 9?
No, it was she fed him at 9.
Okay.
And she hadn't heard him, she went to check on him, hadn't heard him cry or whatever, and so probably about 11:30, 11:40, she went to check on him. He passed away.
All right, that was a 911 call made by Zachary Koehn. Joining me now, in addition to Ann Bremner, is Judge Birmingham in Texas. Judge, I want to talk about this 911 call that we just heard. Now, the one thing I identified here was his voice was very calm. It was very matter of fact, and he even used the term, he was gone. So this does not sound like someone that was upset or was frantic that their little child was found inside a swing and he was gone. He even said, well, maybe it was SIDS, maybe it was sudden infant death syndrome. What do you say about that?
The call to me lacks that sort of shock, that element of surprise where you go in and you find your child has died like that. I mean, I would expect a lot more emotion, things like that. And really, honestly, it seems to be more consistent with this sort of the long time that this killing took to accomplish. I mean, the child was in there for some time. We know that. And it doesn't sound like, based on his emotion, that he was surprised to find the baby the way that it was, honestly.
Yeah, Judge, it looks like we have movement in that stand. There's a new witness, Chief Deputy Pilo, on the stand. Let's hear his testimony right now. Okay, just so you know, the attorney there is reading the transcript of Zachary Koehn, who was the co-defendant in this case. So while they do that, we're going to come out and talk to my guests. Judge, I want to toss to you first. I've asked Ann this question, but let me get your take on this defense of diminished responsibility. How well does that work? Have you seen that in your courtroom? Is it an actual defense that actually gets people off?
It's not we don't have a diminished capacity defense here in Texas in the same sort of formal way that they do there. But basically what they have to prove in order to accomplish the defense in the eyes of the jury in Iowa is that to prove that the defendant was incapable of forming the particular intent that is required for a killing, which in this instance is the specific intent to kill. So you've got that defense. We're going to hear, I think we heard from an expert on postpartum depression this morning. So those types of things are going to be brought out in order to try to accomplish that defense. Does it work? It has before. The things that the jurors are going to be most focused on is what was the circumstances around the killing, what were the actions, was there any covering up, was there any malingering? I know that she used that term just a while ago. What were the actions around that, and have those actions been consistent the entire time throughout the whole case?
Got it. And let me toss to you here. We heard that body cam audio, and we heard how emotional Cheyanne Harris was when the officer responded to the scene. But we heard previous testimony from the nurse that responded that said there was no emotion on either individual. But I heard her crying in the background. You heard her say her name is Cheyanne, and Sterling is in the background. She referred to him as Sterling Silver. So it does sound like she was emotional, at least initially, when first responders arrived.
And did you see her in court doing the same thing as she listened to herself being emotional? I thought that was interesting, too. But sure, she was, and that helps her defense to a certain extent because she looks a little more sympathetic. On the other hand, it hurts her because she should be lacking in any kind of capacity to form intent, and that would mean she might well have been flat like her husband and like she was previously with the nurse.
Right. All right, we're going to have more live testimony in the Cheyanne Harris trial in Iowa. Again, she's on the trial for the murder of her little son, Sterling, who was 4 months old at the time. We'll have more of that live testimony on the other side of the break. Stay tuned to the Law&Crime Network. All right, I'm so glad I have a judge and a defense attorney here joining me this afternoon. And I will start with you. What is the purpose of the defense reading the testimony transcripts of Zachary Koehn here?
Well, because they don't want him there for any number of reasons, or he doesn't want to be there for any number of reasons. He has a Fifth Amendment right on appeal. He's been convicted in this case. They don't want the jury to get the scent of that. He may not present well for the defense. Nothing more boring than a lawyer reading a deposition in the courtroom. However, maybe that's what they want in this instance. So there could be any number of reasons. And finally, maybe he's refusing to cooperate. They can compel his attendance. But the fact remains, maybe it's better and more pristine like this.
Yeah, Judge, what say you? How is this from a strategy standpoint to read this transcript, essentially? Because as a juror, it is kind of boring to sit there and listen to an attorney read something.
That's right. Lawyers are boring enough. But you've got I think what they're doing here is they're building up this defense. And basically, I think where they're going is that he was absent. He worked all the time. He didn't support her. Meanwhile, she is in the midst of this very, very awful postpartum depression. And I think what you're going to hear is kind of what you heard way back in the Leopold and Loeb trial, which is basically only a diseased mind could have caused this. Her mind wasn't right. That is the only reasonable explanation, and therefore she should be excused for her conduct. And that
found inside a swing inside the home with maggots. She was charged in that death, as well as the co-defendant, Zachary Koehn, the father of little Sterling. We'll have more live testimony in Iowa on the other side of the break. Stay tuned to the Law&Crime Network. We'll be right back. All right, again, we're listening to the defense give the transcript testimony of Zachary Koehn, who's the co-defendant in this case, Cheyanne Harris, on the trial for murder of her son, little Sterling, who was found dead at 4 months old, August of 2017. Still with me, Judge Birmingham. Judge, I know your time is very short with us here. I know you have to go. We appreciate you coming on. I want to ask you this really quick. Where do you see this case going? Do you see the same fate for Cheyanne as we saw for Zachary?
Well, that's always a hard prediction to make. When you have a diminished capacity type defense like this, jurors are always going to be placing themselves in the shoes. And the problem with everything that you're hearing for Cheyanne that she has to overcome is that so far, when you have all of this evidence, it has to be considered in the context of a neglectful infanticide. And what that means is that crime took a long time to accomplish. And all of that long time, that just means that all of her actions were totally dependent on neglect over a long period of time. And everything you're hearing right now is really not doing much to persuade jurors that it was anything other than an extreme case of neglect.
Right. And, of course, this all comes down to the jury. And I know your time is up as well. I want to thank both my guests, Ann Bremner out in Seattle, where there's snow, and Judge Birmingham in Texas, where it's about 70 degrees. We're about 60 degrees here in New York City. I want to thank you both for joining us. We'll have so much more of this live testimony on the other side of this break. Stay tuned to the Law&Crime Network. We'll be right back.